Hi everyone, my name is Angela, and in this reading vlog, I'm going to be reading 3 books that I'm really excited to read, but I've been putting them off for years because they have so much hype, and I'm afraid that I'm not going to love them as much as everyone else does. So stay tuned to see what books I pick and if I like them. I am about to start Mistborn. I have no idea what to expect. I just finished reading Assassin's Quest, which was like an 850-page epic fantasy. Usually I wouldn't read like 2 fantasies back to back. However, summer to me is about reading fantasy. So I really want to start this tonight, and I will update you when I have some more thoughts. Reading this very slowly because obviously I need to visualize everything in my head. And is that really a good time to scratch? I need to make sure I'm visualizing everything in a way that makes sense and trying to remember things. So I've literally only read 16 pages. So I went into this book knowing 2 things. One is that the magic system has something to do with like metals, bending them or using them. It's something magical with metals, okay? Literally, that's all I know. The other thing is that this is a heist story, and in the prologue, we basically were on some sort of plantation in this world, and so far it seems like we're in a kind of 18th or 19th century setting in terms of the fashion and the technology. And the sun is red, and there's always ash falling from the sky, and then at night there are these mists that come over the land, and it seems like some of the people in this world are very afraid of the mists and they don't go out in them. So the people who work on the plantations are called ska, and they seem to be literally enslaved, and I don't actually know what the ska are because they seem to be human. I don't know if it's just a class distinction or if they're some sort of different species. Seems like the world is ruled by someone literally called Lord Ruler. And so now we're following in the first chapter someone named Vin, who is a ska, and she is kind of in the main city, and she seems to be part of this group of thieves who steal from the wealthy. So that's all I know. This book is so floppy, I love it. I do like the writing so far. It's very, very different to Robin Hobb, who is the main fantasy writer I've been reading this year. It's a lot more of a contemporary writing style. Robin Hobb's writing sounds very old-timey. Anyway, so that's all I know so far. I'm not going to spoil very much of this book for y'all, but I will give kind of the main plot once I figure out what that is. I literally don't know what it is, but it seems like the world is currently kind of shitty for most people, not unlike our world, and it seems like there might be some sort of rebellion brewing. But right now I'm not going to be reading. I'm going to be watching Bridgerton and eating some ice cream. It is the next day. I am cooking a pasta dish for dinner with sun-dried tomatoes and spinach and garlic and heavy cream. And I did finish the new season of Bridgerton. I have thoughts. I will say that this is probably the least favorite season of mine, mostly because the central love story is quite disappointing, but literally all of the side plots were fun and all of the drama. So I liked it. I didn't love it. I feel like the actor who plays Colin doesn't have any charm, really. I don't know, I don't really like him. So those are my thoughts on Bridgerton. I am gonna read more of Mistborn later and give you a more coherent synopsis of what the book is actually about, but so far I am really enjoying it. I'm on page 50, which is 3 chapters in, and I feel like I can now give you a solid basic understanding of the world. There is this immortal emperor called the Lord Ruler, and it seems like something went to shit a long time ago. We basically have a very strict like class system, so there's like the nobility, and then the ska are kind of like the peasants or the laborers, and then there's a lot about like bureaucracy in here, and so those people, I'm not really sure if they're considered like in between those two or if they're made up of noblemen. In terms of the noblemen, not only do they have wealth and titles and security in life, but they also have magic, and not everyone has this mystical power. It is still really rare, but only these noblemen with this certain ancestry have even a chance of having it. And so basically in this world, people with this ancestry can ingest metals to have certain powers, and you either have like one of the powers or you have all 8. So there's 8 different metals that you can ingest. So mistings are people who have one of these powers, and then Mistborn are people who have all 8 of them. And our main character, Vin, is actually half noble and half not, half ska. She didn't even know that she had this power. She thought it was called like luck. She thought she had this ability to kind of push people to do what she wanted, and it was like a very small ability that she couldn't use up too much of, and it was because I think like there's like a little bit of metal in like the water supply of this city where she lives, so that's why she was like just barely able to use it. And so now she's meeting our other main character, whose name I forget. Oh, his name is Kelsier, and he is also Mistborn. And I think the whole point of this book is that there is going to be some kind of uprising. I mean, it says a new uprising is forming, one built around the ultimate caper, the cunning of a brilliant criminal mastermind, and the determination of an unlikely heroine, a street urchin who must learn to master the power of a Mistborn. I am enjoying, like, it's kind of giving, like, Oliver Twist in the sense that there are, like, a bunch of, like, street urchin, like, thieves living in this kind of, like, dangerous way, and everything's kind of dirty. And I'm excited to learn more about the, like, Lord Ruler and like what happened like 1,000 years ago or something to make everything so shitty. I think I need a little bit of a brain break from reading fantasy, and not that I'm like putting Mistborn down, but I just need like another option for when I'm not like quite in the mood. And the only other book I have going right now is a nonfiction audiobook, so it's like a completely different mood. So since this vlog is about reading really hyped books on my TBR, my next book is going to be Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. Can we take a minute to appreciate this cover? I think it's so cute. I think all of the little details are adorable. If I was a romance novelist, I would love to get a cover with like cute illustrations like that. I think I'm gonna go on the treadmill and either read this with my eyes or listen to the audiobook, and hopefully get into this tonight or go back to Mistborn. But either way, I will let you know what this is about. So I did end up going for a walk and starting the audiobook for Love and Other Words, and I think right now I'm going to sit down and read like a bunch more of this because I'm actually really enjoying it. I got to page 69 during my walk, so let me tell you the premise. This romance book is told in 2 timelines, so essentially every other chapter is either in the past or the present. And in the past, Macy is a 13-year-old girl whose mother has passed away a few years ago, and she and her father are just kind of together trying to do their best, and her dad decides to buy a little like cozy vacation cabin. So they spend some time vacationing in this little cottage cabin every so often, and the boy who lives next door in this cabin is Elliot. Elliot and Macy really bond over their love of reading and their love of words, and it's just really sweet to see their interactions together and like the cozy setting. What mittens? The cozy setting is really fun, and in the present timeline, Macy is a surgical resident, maybe just a doctor, and she hasn't spoken to Elliot in like a decade. And one day they spot each other in a coffee shop, and it's very much like a holy shit, this is kind of rocking my entire world kind of thing. And so now they are back in touch, but she is actually engaged to be married. And I've seen a lot of people have really strong feelings about this book. If you go on Goodreads, I gotta throw my cat's hair tie. If you go on Goodreads, the average rating of this book is like a 4.26, which is a really high rating, and it has almost 600,000 ratings. But I noticed that a lot of people that I follow have given this book like 2 stars or 1 star, and I think that something probably really controversial happens in this. Like, I think maybe there's gonna be cheating or something. I don't know, like, I'm wondering like what it could be about this novel that people could hate so much, because right now it just seems like a really like sweet story. I'm on page 164, and so she's engaged in the present timeline. I don't know if I said that. And she's like reconnecting with Elliot, I guess trying to be like friends and trying to make up for the fact that like they have lost touch for so long, even though they were such like important people to each other. She invites him to like a picnic with her friends and her fiance. Like, they're meeting. Like, there's only like 7-8 people there. It is so messy. And she's not trying to be messy. Like, she's told her fiance like what happened mostly, like that she's connecting with an old friend who she used to be, you know, romantically involved with. Anyway, I need to know what's gonna happen. And I have finished Love in Other Words. I pretty much knew right when I started this that I was going to read it really quickly, because I just immediately connected to it and it was such an easy, engaging read, and I just really wanted to know all of the history between these characters. I wanted to know how they were going to resolve their issues. I wanted to know what their issues were exactly, because you kind of know that something really explosive happened between these two people when they were teenagers, and you don't really get all the answers until a later point in the book. And I'm giving this 4.25 stars. I love when I read a book that makes me just want to consume it really quickly. It doesn't necessarily mean that the book is better than other books that I read more slowly, but I think there is something special about being so compelled to find out all the answers and be in the story. I think the main reason why it's not 5 stars for me is that it's just a little bit melodramatic. It's a little bit of a book that uses sad topics, sad events in the character's life for a bit of shock value, and I don't love that. It didn't ruin the book for me or anything. I really felt like these characters belonged together. I could see their chemistry. I thought it was really sweet and wholesome, and I knew that these characters were just absolutely obsessed with each other in the best way. I think the authors did a really great job of building these characters and showing us why they loved each other so much, but some of the ending stuff just, it wasn't perfect. I can see why someone would read this and kind of hate it, but I didn't hate it. 4.25 stars is certainly a very good rating, and this was a great palate cleanser between high fantasy books, and I'm really glad that I finally picked this up because I have had this on my shelves for at least 2.5 years. I have finished Mistborn. I'm so happy I finished. I feel so accomplished for reading this book that I have wanted to read for so many years. I ended up reading this a lot on audio and doing a puzzle, and that like really helped me to focus and also get into it. It was taking a lot of mental effort to just like sit down and physically read, and I was getting a bit restless and bored, so the audiobook really helped. This is probably one of the more like action-packed fantasies I've read. There were a lot of like fight scenes, there's a lot of plot moving forward, so in that sense I can see why a lot of people really love this book and really get into his writing so quickly, just because like you don't really have time to be like bored. I really enjoyed this. I'm giving Mistborn 4 stars. It wasn't like a perfect fantasy book that made me like obsessed and an all-time favorite new fantasy book, but I do really think that Brandon Sanderson has some 5-star books in store for me in the future. I love when fantasy books have a really like explosive ending, and like the last 100 pages or so are just really like twisty and intense, and you're just really scared for the characters, and that was definitely the case here. If you read this, my favorite characters were Sazed and Vin. I think what I liked most about this book were the scenes where we were at like the fancy nobleman like balls, kind of like in like a period drama where they're like going to balls and dancing and having dinners. There's a little bit of that in here, which I really liked. I liked all of the plotting and planning and political maneuvering, and then I really liked whenever we learned about like religions or the lore of the world. So the second book of the vlog was also a success, and I'm so happy about it. And then the next and final book of the vlog is going to be The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is a book that people really, really love. I've heard so much about this series, and also I just want to point out the size difference in these is crazy. All I know about this is it takes place in either China or a land inspired by China, and I think there's some sort of like military school or like academic setting, and I've heard that it's military fantasy and political fantasy, and I really love political fantasy, so I really hope that I love this. I did indeed start The Poppy War yesterday. I read 56 pages. The time period that this is inspired by is really confusing because it's inspired by a war that happened in the 20th century, but I think this is supposed to take place in like ancient China. And then I'm really surprised by the writing style being like kind of modern. Like some of the things that she says, like, I don't know, are things that like I don't know how to explain it. Like, I feel like it was a choice to not make the language sound more old-timey. Like someone like Robin Hobb, like her language is still very readable, but it sounds old-timey. This very much is giving modern. It does make it very easy to get through. Like I didn't really have to put a bunch of effort into reading 56 pages. I'm not going to give you a synopsis because I don't actually think there's that much more to say than what I already said. I haven't gotten to the fantasy yet, so I did kind of peek at the back and I think I saw a little bit of what the magic is going to be, but I'm really hoping that there's dragons, because the second book is literally called The Dragon Republic, and obviously that could be like a metaphor for like some leader who's known as the dragon. But I will say, if that is the case, I'm gonna be sorely disappointed. But I am enjoying all of this stuff about like war and history and political tension. It's making me kind of like look things up about real life history that I kind of haven't thought about since high school and didn't really remember. So I think this could go either way. I could end up loving this, or this could be like a 3-star. I can't tell yet, but I will say I feel like it's very accessible fantasy. If you're someone who's like, I want to read fantasy but it seems really hard, I think this might be a good pick. So I'm 51% of the way through the Poppy War, and I know I said earlier that I felt like this could be like a 3-star or a 4 or 5, like anywhere in there. Obviously there's a big difference between a 3-star and a 5-star, and right now I'm feeling like there's no way this is gonna be below a 4-star. I have been really invested in this. I just feel like it's so easy to get into. I've loved all the school stuff and the training. Right now it's a little bit more about war. And usually that's not something I love, but we've started to get more of the fantasy element in combination with the war. It's possible that I'll end up preferring the first half of the book to the second half, but I think there is potential for this to be 5 stars, so I'm really excited to see where this goes. So I just finished the Poppy War, and let me give you a quick synopsis before I tell you my final thoughts, because I never really explained the basic premise. So we're in a land inspired by China, and there's this girl named Rin, and she is a peasant girl. She's a war orphan, and her foster parents are criminals, and she has a very hard life. And one day they're like, hey girlie, we're gonna marry you off to this old man who could be your grandpa to further our criminal empire, and you're just gonna like have his babies and be his servant basically. And she's like, no, how can I girl boss my way out of this situation? And she basically takes this test called the Keju, which is like this nationwide exam to get into the academies, and only the very top academy is like tuition free. It's the military academy. So she essentially has to be in like the very, very, very top scores. And poor people don't really succeed in this test. It's really more for the children of really wealthy families. They study for this like their whole lives. They have tutors. And so it's very, very unlikely that Ren is going to succeed, but she does. So then we go with her to this military school. At first she's like, okay, I've done the impossible. I've made it to this school. I'm safe now. And then quickly she learns that everyone kind of hates her for her dark skin, because she's poor, because she's from the South and she has a different accent. And they're like, hey, we actually don't think you belong here. You're only here because they want to make it seem like the test is fair. We don't think you're gonna succeed. We hope that you die. And she's like, oh, cool. And the fantasy element is shamanism, which is basically when people are able to commune with the gods, and the gods actually give people their powers. There were moments around like the 20 to 30% mark where I was so captivated by this book, and it was giving 5-star energy. If I had continued to love it that much or around that much the whole time, it definitely would have been 5 stars, but I think I'm gonna give it a 4. This got really dark at the end. I liked how much this explored war and genocide and brutality. The fantasy element isn't really my favorite. I think that's what's stopping this from being like a really, really great book for me. I think what I liked more was the political and military aspects. But either way, I'm really glad I read this. I'm probably gonna read the next book next month, and I really did enjoy this. I definitely see why R.F. Kuang is regarded as such an incredible fantasy writer, and I hope that one of the next 2 books is going to be 5 stars for me. Thank you so much for watching this vlog. It was very successful. Subscribe if you want to see more bookish content from me, and I hope you have a lovely week.